Hello everybody, Jediwarlock here and welcome back to another video here on the channel. Today we are continuing on in the world of Warcraft and finishing up our swim around mainland Kalimdor. If you haven't seen part 1 yet, go check that out before watching this video so you're all caught up. As of this recording, we also just passed 9,000 subscribers on the channel, which is an incredible milestone that I never thought I could achieve here on YouTube. Thank you all very much for your support. So, with all that being said, let's get right into it and explore the oceans of Azeroth. Heading back out from the Tower of Ethel Rathor in Desolace, I ran into this sunken ship that was surprisingly in good shape. A lot of the others of this type we've seen before are often broken, so it was cool to swim around in an intact one. After swimming past the mountains around Maradon and finding this strange inlet, I next passed by Shadowprey Village, the main horde base in the zone. There is a large bay nearby that is pretty well designed, with plenty of Makruras and traps that I'm sure have to do with the nearby quests. I also found some sort of cartilage from these creatures washed up on the shore, so I suppose the Shadowprey guards have been busy keeping the beaches safe. Not too much farther, the green wilds of Feralis came into view, and I knew I'd have my work cut out for me here. This zone has 2 massive islands that I knew would take a bit to circumnavigate. Sardor Isle was first, and this was the first time I realized the landscape here actually looks rather similar to Darkshore, just with less rain and fewer elf ghosts. The highborn ruins of Solarsal were interesting for a less natural reason. A shattered elven dock lies here. Maybe a clue toward a former post-sundering outpost? The strait between the 2 islands did not reveal much, but just after the Naga-infested ruins on the Isle of Dread, I found a skeleton that stood out as one of the only special objects on this side of the coast. Perhaps an ancestor of the mighty Kodo, or something else entirely, but it was a cool find in my opinion. Just a few seconds south, I also found this strange stone pinnacle, but other than that, my swim around the Isle of Dread was otherwise uneventful. One neat thing I wanted to point out is the difference in depth between the mainland strait and the island strait. Between the 2 islands, the depth is pretty manageable, but between the islands and the coastline dips all the way down into the fatigue zone. No wonder you probably should take the boat to get out here. I stopped at Feathermoon Stronghold to grab the flight point before swimming across to explore the Forgotten Coast. Giants and pesky water elementals prevented me from going overboard with the exploration here, but I did run into the wrecked rowboats from the Woodpaw Knoll quest line, which told me I wasn't too far from civilization yet. That soon changed, however, as I swam away from Feralis and into uncharted territory. Silithis, the sandy, bug-infested corner of Kalimdor, wasn't visible from the shore, so I swam around this corner of the continent in solitude. Similar to Quel'Thalas, however, the landscape was not entirely uninviting. The hidden Tauren village came into view, and I spent a few minutes taking in this unique stop on my trip. There is a windmill, a building complete with relaxing inn music, and some sort of animal enclosure complete with a tall tent. No mobs or NPCs can be found here, but I did find some cool-looking canoes, so maybe a few Tauren take their vacations here every so often. Right after this, I ran into a massive seaside cave that was abandoned and a bit creepy to explore. For those of you who mentioned a dragon living here, I did a little bit of investigating, and Andre Straz doesn't show up until the Mists of Pandaria expansion, so I wasn't able to meet him here during Wrath of the Lich King. After these 2 fun landmarks, I wasn't sure they could be topped for the rest of this episode, but boy was I wrong. Tenaris turned out to be a goldmine of coastal discoveries, starting with this hidden beach that has no mobs and is actually really peaceful. This is pretty much the exact opposite of Land's End Beach, which has these aggressive snapping turtles, but still has some secrets, including this crashed flying machine belonging to the gnome Narain, and the location of Quergo's treasure. I knew the next leg of the journey was going to be the most intense. The silhouettes of the distant islands off the southern coast were visible, and I knew I had to at least try and get there before the fatigue set in. Meredith the Mermaiden hangs out around here, but since I wasn't on the Scepter of the Shifting Sands quest line, she wasn't going to speed this process up for me. Let's do this. After a nerve-wracking minute or two, I made it to the islands with just a fraction of my fatigue bar remaining. The Gnome Island is closest, with a few of their signature houses, but not much else. The oil rig in the center of the area is one of the only of its type we see built into the ocean itself, but doesn't host anything of importance. The other island is more goblin in nature, with 2 huts containing some invention parts. The dirt pile for the Scepter quest line can also be found here, as can a rather idyllic beach complete with palm trees. There are no inhabitants to be found in the South Seas, but the effort the developers put into making this separate landmass could be evidence of scrapped content, or maybe nothing at all. On paper, there is virtually no reason to ever come here besides the one quest, but I would recommend to every classic WoW fan to try and come out here at least once to appreciate this secret area. Swim speed potions might just do the trick. After leaving the South Sea Islands, I continued swimming north and next ran into Winky, the pirate gnome. That reminded me of another suggestion a few of you mentioned, the super secret gnome village at the bottom of the Teneris Sea. I did a lot of research into this, and while it is definitely possible to reach, the general unease that comes with traveling into the deepest part of the ocean wasn't very appealing. Plus, I feel like, even with my healing abilities, my druid wouldn't meet a very nice fate. Reminds me of when I had to save that elf who... never mind. Story for another time. Anyway, swimming north revealed the Lost Rigger Cove, a base for the pirates of the area, as well as the hidden location of the Elemental Ring for the Zelda quest line that begins in Ungoro Crater. The pirates were a bit easier to avoid than the snapping turtles, and the next place I discovered was Zalashi's Den, home to one of the only other friendly Naga in the game. This guy has no purpose in any quest whatsoever, so the fact that you have to discover this cave for the Explore Teneris deed is rather intriguing. The burning ships on the horizon off the coast of Steamweedle Port turned out not to be a safe zone from the fatigue, so I had to hightail it out of there before I got lost at sea. The Steamweedle Port was a great break point for me along my journey, and I ended up picking up the journey the following afternoon. Narain's cottage was the only remaining landmark here on the coast, and finished connecting the dots of the Scepter quest line rather poetically. The murky waters of Dustwallow Marsh were the penultimate zone on this adventure, and began with me scoping out the Theramore deserter camp on this small island. Not a very impressive display compared to the power of the Alliance Navy. Inland, near Tide Fury Cove, is Nat's Landing, current campsite of the famous fisherman Nat Pagel. He didn't sell me any fish, so I decided to swim back across the inlet and visit Theramore Isle itself, which boasted the largest anchor we've seen yet underneath the docks. The lighthouse is also pretty cool, and is a neat parallel to the one off the coast of Westfall, as well as the other found later in this zone. The water continued to grow darker as I swam north, and I encountered a few rowboats as well as the Defias diver camps just off the coast. I won't spoil the quest line that goes on here because it is phenomenal, but after being ambushed by some of the divers, I ended up finding Ren McGill, a diver for the Alliance and the inspiration behind my diving helmet thumbnails. The shallows near the diving camps revealed a few shipwrecks as well as burning debris that are of great interest to the Defias. Alkaz Island, a level 60 outdoor raid area, was well guarded by Naga and Hydras, so while I wasn't able to visit the island itself, the lighthouse was relatively unprotected, and the northern side of the island even revealed a view of the far-off Echo Isles. The remainder of the zone was almost entirely dominated by Murlocs who control the North Islands, but I was able to sneak in and get this chest before swimming out of their territory. This burned Tauren tent is abandoned, and could represent either the efforts of the Grim Totem clan, the Murlocs, or the Alliance versus Horde conflict here. The dry hills of the Barrens meant I was getting close to the end of my journey, but there were still a few landmarks to be seen here. The Marines at Northwatch hold their ground against the South Sea pirates who have established a camp along the nearby coast. Frey Island is a secluded yet interesting piece of the Barrens, with dozens of warriors and swashbucklers gathering to prove their battle skills. You can even swim down into the drain and pretend you just got sent into the Rancor pit or something. The small Tauren hut on the edge of Ratchet marked the last landmark I saw on my journey, and the two shaman there were kind enough to let me pass on my way to my destination. When I reached that ship parked in the harbor just a few minutes later, it felt good to have completed another long trip around the world of Azeroth. Using my druid's aquatic form most of the time, my total time was about 3¼ hours, which is noticeably shorter than my Eastern Kingdom's swim. This trip revealed a lot more about the world than I have ever discovered before, and I hope you are all excited for my future journeys around the Azure Mist Isles and beyond. Thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed today's video, make sure to leave a like, comment down below with your thoughts, subscribe if you're new to join the Jedi Order, and until next time, may the Force be with you.